Daf Daled Amud Beis and Hey Amud Aleph, the boomerang effect of thought, Ra'anana Kollel מעשה. The shir has been dedicated kindly by Rael and Michael Gordon. Thank you. In memory of their father. The 20th Yortzeit is today. Rabbi Rabbi Mordechai and the Meshoma have an aliyah. I feel as if I have a bit of a part in your existence when you tell me that my father married your parents, and whatever schus he had in you, I was Yoresh. That's why you're sitting in the shir here every day. We'll see in the learning today why the vision of from the river to the sea is going to be fulfilled. And it will be a one-state solution, not a two-state solution. And the force that will bring about its fulfillment is not us. The force that is going to bring about their fulfillment is the Palestinians. We'll see in the Gemara how this works. So we start off with a few psukim in Parsha Shoftim on Eidim Zomemin. Ki yakumed Hamas, interesting, Beish la'anos bo Sarah. If a witness comes from Hamas, an evil thinking person, to cause damage, and the shoftim, the judges, are very careful and they figure out that these witnesses are false. And the only way we really can figure out that the witnesses are false is if other witnesses come and say, you were not even there that day. You were somewhere else. True false evidence is when we have evidence about the Eidim, not about the event. We don't know whether the event happened or not. All we do know is these Eidim are false. These Eidim are lying. That we know for sure. That's called Eidim Zomemin. And then the din is Va'asitem lo kasher zamam la'asot la'achiv. You do to him what he planned to do to his brother. The same onesh, whatever punishment he was going to cause to the person in court, you now give to the aid. Uviarta hara mikirbecha. And you will destroy the evil from within your midst. It's interesting, we don't only destroy evil when it's in our enemies. If chas v'sholem there's evil in the Jewish people, we destroy that as well. That's important to understand in the current situation. This is not about a war against enemies, it's about a war against evil. And it doesn't matter where the evil is. If there's true evil, even in the Jewish people, you have to get rid of it. And Rashi says, Kasher Zaman brings the Gemara, V'lo Kasher Asami, Kan Amru Hargo Energin. The most strangest halacha in Eidim Zomemin is if the sentence was carried out, you no longer punish the Eidim in this way. So they get a much stronger punishment if their will was not carried out than if it was. So they come along and say, this person Reuven murdered Shimon, so Reuven should get the death sentence. The witnesses are found to be Eidim Zomemin, so the Eidim get the death sentence. But if Reuven was given the death sentence erroneously already, then we don't give the death sentence anymore to the Eidim, although you would think they've done more damage. And that's the difficulty in the whole parsha of Eidim Zomemin. And then interesting, why do you have to destroy evil from within you? Not just because of that evil, but it's also preventative, so that those who are left alive never try this again. They realize how serious this is. That's what Uviyata Aramik Yirbecha is. This is not about, in our situation, it's not about Israel's right to defend itself. It's about Israel's obligation to make sure it doesn't happen again in the future, not to us, not to anybody else in the world. That's what it is. That's what Bi'arta Haramik Yirbecha is, that people need to know. It's going to be destroyed. It's going to be pulled out. V'lo yusifu la'asot od kadavar hara hazeh b'kirbecha. And that nobody else will do this ever again. That's the purpose of this type of punishment. Okay, so where do we see the whole future thing? So we had the Mishnah that gave us 4 primary nezikin, which we learned, shor, bor, eish, maveh, and hever. On Daf Daled, Rabbi Yoshaya expands that to 13, and Rabbi Chia expands it to 24 different types of nezikin. That's all on Daf Daled. Included in Rabbi Chia's 24 types of nezikin, of damages one can cause, is Eidim Zomemin. It's one of the ways you can damage somebody, by giving false evidence against them. Asks the Gemara, we see that even Rabbi Chia, who brings 24 forms of nezikin, doesn't bring nezikin that are caused by mouth. Doesn't bring Lashon Hara as one of them. He doesn't bring Moser. There are various mouth-initiated damages that he doesn't mention. So why mention Eidim Zomemin? That's also a mouth-initiated Isur, damage. Answers the Gemara, Hatam afa gavdelet be'emaise, even though that Eidim Zomemin is in fact a verbal damage that doesn't entail a physical act of damage, other than the words, Rachmana Karye Maise, the Torah calls it an action. It isn't really an action. Earlier we talk about Motzi Shemra, and we say that Motzi Shemra includes an action because there has to be a physical relationship has to have happened. But in the case of Eidim Zomim, we don't say there is actually an action. We say the Torah calls it a Maaseh. You do to him what he planned to do to his brother. Ask the Achronim, but still it says he planned. It doesn't say he did. In fact, if he did, you can't, Eidim Zomim doesn't work. What do you mean the Torah calls it an action because it says la'asot la'achiv? It's zamam la'asot. You've got to read the two words together. It's what he planned to do to his brother, not what he did do to his brother. How can you say that it's a Maaseh? The various Achronim, the Rabbi Soloveitchik brings the Netziv, and they all go along a certain line, and I bring four difficulties. We haven't got time to go into them, but I raise four difficulties in learning it that way, that there really is a Maaseh because this works only after Gemara Din. It's very, very difficult to understand in the words of our Gemara and in the words of a Tosfos in Shvuos on Daf Chaf Aleph. It's incredibly difficult to explain. So we're going to take a different approach to what this is about. Why is Eid Zomem, this type of false evidence, called by the Torah an action, when it isn't an action? To do that, we're going to learn a remarkable Rabbi Chonon Wasserman in Ksubis, and we're going to use a Malbim in the Chumash to understand it, and then a mind-blowing Maharal Miprag, and then it'll become clear. Says Rabbi Chonon Wasserman a strange thing. The chiyuv kasher zamam hu memele belo ma'aseh hamechayevet klal. The punishment given to an Eid Zomem is not caused by any action they took. But what they were going to cause to the other boomerangs back to them. It's not their action. And it's got nothing to do with a love that doesn't have an action or a love that does. It's completely different. This is a very unique halacha, where it's not because of anything they did, it's because of the boomerang effect of this particular Isur. It's as if they inherit it. Just as an inheritance comes to somebody without an action, normally if you acquire something, you do a kinyan, you buy, you zoche from Hefker, the things that you do. But a yoresh, an heir, how does an heir get the property? It's memel, it comes automatically, he does nothing, it's passive. So the punishment that comes to an Eid Zomem, says Rabbi Chonon, is passively instituted. It doesn't come from them. It actually comes from the other person. It comes from the person they were trying to be mechayev. And it's a very difficult Rabbi Chonon. It's like, really, like what are you talking about? To understand the Rabbi Chonon, firstly, the Malbim. The Malbim explains that kasher zamam is a particular kind of thought. It's not just I had a bad thought, I planned to do evil. Zamam is a detailed strategy. And he calls that a machshava amuka. Eich la'asot ra lechavero. This is not just I would like to kill this person. He actually has worked out the entire plan step by step. And he began executing on the plan. And the only thing that got in his way was somebody caught him out. Somebody else came and said, Imanu ayitem, you were with us that day, you weren't even there. Had that not happened, the plan would have been executed. The plan was so perfect, nothing could go wrong, except it did go wrong. That's zamam. To have a plan of action that is carefully thought out to damage another human being, that's what zimum means. So bear in mind, we're talking about a machshava with a lot of energy. Thoughts have energy. We know that. A good thought has good energy, a bad thought has bad energy, but there are levels of energy. You can have a thought which has like a little bit of energy, like out of a transistor in a circuit. And you can have a thought that has nuclear energy. It depends on who's the thinker and what the thought is. What is the power of the thought? And the Malbim introduces us to the idea that zamam is a very powerful thought. This is not just a little variable. Somebody has a bit of a tainug and somebody else wants to do them in. No, this is a carefully thought out plan for the demise of the other person. What does the Maharal say? A machshava is an interesting thing. It says, "Uviata harab mikirbecha," you must expunge the evil from your midst. Perush davar shehura. It's not just the person. You've got to expunge the evil thing. What is the thing? המחשבה של האדם אינו דבר קיים. Now, a person's thought, but this person didn't do anything. The Eidim Zomim didn't do anything. They just planned to do something. So all they've got is a thought. A thought isn't a davar. How do you uproot something which isn't real? Because you can think one thing one day and you can think something the other way. But he says this plan, this thought, is a thought until the moment it's implemented. A very important principle, just an energetic principle, a global principle, a universal principle, a cosmic principle of the Maharal. And that is that a thought is full of power until it's executed. When it's executed, there's no longer power in the thought. The thought's done. And you know that anybody who's given a shir knows how much energy there is in the thought process of the shir and how exhausting that is until you've given the shir. And then you stop thinking about it. It's done. You would have to start. It's very hard to start thinking about it again after you've given the shir because you've executed on it. A thought loses its energy upon execution. Now you've got the thing, now you've got the shir, you've got the work of art, or you've got the business that you've built. But that energy that drives an entrepreneur when he's busy thinking about his business, once he's built his business and he's ready, now he wants to exit, now he wants to sell and get some money. He's no longer driven by the thought process. That energy is lost once you execute. Once an Eid Zomem executes, once the person is actually given the punishment, the thought process of the Eid Zomem is over. There's nothing to destroy. What do you have to destroy? The thought. But the thought doesn't exist after it's been executed, says the Maharal. We're not even finished with the Maharal. Aval ikaratam hu inyan nifla. And if you think that's amazing, says the Maharal, just listen to what's coming. And what is that? המחשבה שהוא חשב לעשות לאחר יהפך עליו וחייב ביתה, כי מה שרצה לעשות לאחר, אותה המחשבה יהפוך עליו. It is the nature of thought, of this level of wickedness of thought, of this level of detailed strategic thought. It is the nature of such thought. If the thought is inappropriate, it's the nature of the thought to bounce off the person to whom it's directed. He says it's like driving a ship into another ship, and your ship gets damaged as well. It's like throwing a ball at a wall, he says. Doesn't damage the wall, it comes back at you. That's what a strategic thought is. If the strategic thought is founded on evil, on wrong, all the force of that thought hits the wall and shoots right back at you, says the Maharal. That's the cosmic design of the world. That's what a thought does. And therefore, kol achoshed b'ksherim lokeh, and so on. He goes on to explain a number of different Gemaras in that way. V'hu domeh la'adam shezarak even b'davar kasher ve'en nichnas bo oto even, shav alav. If the stone doesn't penetrate the object to which you're throwing it, it bounces back at you. Once it's penetrated, it absorbs the energy. The energy is now gone from the stone. So if the Eid Zomem actually acts out and the person is killed, then the stone has been absorbed by the object for whatever reason, and there's no longer energy in the stone. The thought retains its energy until it's absorbed. If it isn't absorbed in he to whom it's directed, it bounces back and gets absorbed by he who created it. That's the way the world works. That's the power of a negative thought. Now, if it's a little kind of a negative thought, it doesn't work like that to the same extent, or we wouldn't feel it as much. But if it's a strategic thought that's been thought out in detail, then that's what happens. והכל ברמז זה במה שאמרו חכמים כאשר זמם ולא כאשר עשה, כי כאשר זמם אותה המחשבה שהיה רוצה לעשות, נהפך עליו. He says we see that in Purim with Haman, v'napochu. That's the idea. We see this in many different places, that's how the world is built. And that's why I say, what happened on October the 7th is not going to happen to the Palestinians. Because it's not Asher Zaman, it's Asher Asu. They did it. So the energy of that evil thinking, that's gone. We absorbed that nebuch. That was our korban. We absorbed that energy. That's never going to happen to them. No Jewish state, no Jewish army, no Jewish person would ever do that to anybody. It's not going to happen to them. But their thought, what are they zomem? They're zomem from the river to the sea, a single state. That they will get. It will be a single state from the river to the sea, a Jewish state. That's what they'll get. And the power that will bring that about will be the force of their evil, bouncing off us because we have the protection of Hashem. The more they want that, the more they demonstrate throughout the world, the more energy they give to that. We should celebrate it. The more energy they give to this thought of wiping us out, all of that energy is going to bounce off us and hit back at them. And the source of that energy will be them. It won't even be us. And that we learn from the Guraria, from the Maharal on Kasher Zamam, what the underlying cosmic principle of Kasher Zamam is. And that's why our Gemara says, the Torah calls it Kariya Maisa Dichtiv Vasitim Lo Kasher Zamam, that although it's not a Maisa, he doesn't do anything, because what happens to him, as the Rabbi Chonon says, is not because of his action. It's not his action that causes it. That's why it's not a Lav Sheish B'Maisa. It's not a Maisa. But so then how does it work? Why is it included? Because there is a Maisa. It comes back from the other person. It's not from him. He inherits it. He doesn't create it. And that, Emir Hashem, is the way these things. And we need to know, not just in terms of what's happening in the world today, but in terms of our own actions. Be very careful of negative thoughts. Negative, you know that they say, bearing a grudge is like hating somebody and drinking poison so that he will die. It just kills you. It doesn't kill him. Lashon Hara doesn't kill him. It kills you. And hate and all of these negative thoughts do nothing for somebody who doesn't deserve them. I'm talking about somebody who does deserve them. Somebody who doesn't deserve them, it does nothing against them. It only works back against you. That's the nature of bad thoughts, says the Maharal, the Malbim, and in a halachic sense, Rabbi Chonon, in explaining this difficult piece.